Greetings, everyone. This is a little segment that I'm doing called Adaptation Ideas, because I feel that I'm not going to be able to get all of my projects done, so I figure I might share some ideas here on YouTube. And one of them I'm doing is ideas for adaptations. Like, I mainly have done a lot of original ideas, like Mind Worms on Holy Land. I mean, nothing's 100% original, but these are still, like, my ideas. But I did do one feature-length adaptation based on the Legend of Zelda games, which I'm very proud of. But I also have, I have a lot of other original ideas I want to do on bigger budgets, but I also have some adaptation ideas. Now, we kind of live in an era where nothing's original anymore, and you have so many remakes and reboots, but adaptations are different. You're taking pre-existing stories and adapting them to film, or even pre-existing, like, video games or stuff like that. Now, I am going to remake some of my earlier movies. Like, I am planning on doing a remake of Unholy Land and Mind Worms, but that's different. That's something a lot of filmmakers have done. Sam Raimi did the short film Within the Woods that he remade as Evil Dead. His friend Josh Becker did Stryker's War, which he remade as Thou Shalt Not Kill Except. Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a remake of his lost 8mm film Firelight. And even, like, certain episodes of TV shows like Family Guy are shot-for-shot remakes of pilots. So that's different. And of course, yes, you do have the Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation, but that was just a fan film that a bunch of kids did for fun, and it clearly has way more heart and passion than these soulless Disney live-action remakes. Not counting those, I will say, even though I don't really want to do remakes, there is one movie that I do want a remake of, and it is Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. I love that movie, but I still think that movie is very flawed, and I think it has a lot of potential, to advance the lore if a reboot was ever done. Whether I'm going to do it animated or live action, I'm not sure. But I have some other ideas, like I'm going to talk about that in this little series I'm doing. I also want to talk about a more faithful adaptation of Land of the Lost that's not like the Will Ferrell movie. I also want to talk about a adaptation of Illusion of Gaia. But for this first episode, I'm going to talk about a very niche book that I want to adapt. It's actually a book series called the Dreamhouse Kings, a book series that practically nobody talks about. It doesn't have the same recognition as other books like Harry Potter, and even the author Robert Liparulo is somebody that almost nobody talks about. But I heard that he lives in Colorado, and while I do plan on moving back, to the South at some point, while I'm here in Colorado for the time being, this is something I kind of want to get off the ground if I ever come across Robert Liparulo in person. So, without getting into too many spoilers in this first segment, the gist of the story of the Dreamhouse Kings is that there's this Victorian house, an old, creepy, abandoned Victorian house that this family moves into. The main protagonists are the two boys, the 15-year-old Xander and his 12-year-old brother David. Now, when I read this book back in high school, I could really identify with these characters, because Xander, I was 15 at the time, my brother was 12, Xander was very into movies, he was very into filmmaking, and his brother was very into video games. So I very much identify with that. I mean, I got my brother into the series, and we actually considered adapting this back in our house in Summerall. That's what we imagined it, because, if you ever read, you imagine a house looking like something you're familiar with. And with this, my brother suggested that I could play as Xander, he could play as David. I thought about that, but I felt that would be too much of a vanity thing, and it's kind of awkward for me. I don't really like playing a main star in my films. That's why I always cast myself as a side character. There have been exceptions, but that was more because of convenience. And yes, I cast myself as a protagonist in Paranormal Kids, but that's because I was going through a weird phase, and that's a decision that I regret. I wish I could have given that role to one of my cousins. But I thought about having some of my cousins play the roles, and this was something that I thought of doing even back in high school. And I've gotten back into the series because, this is just such a niche series with a cult following that deserves to have an adaptation. So anyway, I forgot to get into the meat and potatoes of it. So in the house, this isn't too spoilery, but there are these doors that lead to different portals that lead to different times. In a way, it's almost like a creepy atmospheric version of Banjo-Kazooie and Super Mario 64, where you have this hub world and you can go into these different worlds. And I don't know if, and it's also a little bit like Poltergeist, but it does its own spin on things. Like, don't get me wrong, it's like nothing is 100% original, but, it just depends on how you put your own spin on things. Even Lord of the Rings took a lot of inspiration from different lore, mythos, and fairy tales. But one of my questions I have, it's like later after reading this book series, I watched House and House 2, and I kind of just curiously wonder if Robert Liparulo got any inspiration from those films or if it's just a coincidence. But anyway, the main antagonist of the story is a man named Taxidian. He's described as having a gaunt face. He's somebody you don't want to mess with. I see him as kind of like being cool and calculative, but maybe getting a little bit more unhinged as the series goes on. I kind of see him as kind of like a mix of a calm version of the Kurgan from Highlander and Christopher Lee's Dracula from the Hammer films. And he wants the house for himself for his own personal gain, but the family members need to stay in there for reasons I won't get into because it's also kind of spoilery. And I had a lot of different ideas. You see, Robert Liparulo, he is interested in doing film adaptations of his works. It's just the only time I've ever seen a page where he talked about greenlighting the film was some website that dates all the way back to 2009. And I have not heard any updates, because like I said, this book is extremely below the radar. You'll barely find any artwork unless it's fan art. So this was a book in which I really, really had to use my imagination a lot, which I really, really love. It is one of those unique things where you really have to use your imagination a lot more. And I've advanced my imagination of reading it over the years for different ideas for turning into a film. And I've tried scripts in the past, but I never finished them. Right now, I've gotten some really good progress. All I have left is to finish the 5th book, Whirlwind, and then start on Frenzy. But I have finished the first 4 screenplays. So that is quite an accomplishment. And I think that one of the things is, I don't think these movies should have major actors. Because one of the things is Xander, he likes to reference different movies, kind of like me. And so that would be kind of jarring and kind of too meta-ish if, let's say, he mentioned, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a role in the movie. That would just be really weird. It would feel too much like meta humor, and that's not what this book series is about. So I really do think this should be done independently, and it should be done with unknown actors. I also think that it should be true to when it's set. I mean, it's not explicitly stated, but it came out over the course of 2009 to 2011, and the books take place over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks. So you could argue that it takes place maybe in 2009 or something. We don't have to explicitly state that, but we could have it be more true to that. Especially because Xander is a young filmmaker who uses like a mini DV camera and wants to make movies and post stuff on YouTube. And I'd even incorporate some of my own kind of filmmaking experiences in there as well. If we were to update it for a modern audience, they would make him a TikToker, and I do not want to do that. That would be extremely dated and just downright gimmicky. I mean, yes, you could argue that maybe the mini DV camera would be dated, but it's basically like a little box with a lens and a LCD screen, so that serves as the generic caricature of a video camera, so that's not going to date anything. Also, I want to make sure we do it with the right people, because Robert Liparulo, he's Christian, and these books, just like his others, have Christian themes, and a lot of big studios don't want to do that because, of, like, political correctness crap. So we want to make sure we do it with somebody who will actually respect, his themes. We especially don't want to do like what Amazon is doing with Rings of Power, or like what John Borman did with his Lord of the Rings script back in the 70s. And I think it's also important to notice that, I am a believer in always respecting the source material if you ever do an adaptation. I mean, that god-awful Halo TV show. I'm not even a big fan of the Halo games. I think that what they did to that Halo TV show was downright disrespectful. And, I kind of hate that people think that because a filmmaker makes certain films a certain way, then all their films are going to be like that. I mean, I was able to change my style from Mindworms to Zelda. Peter Jackson was able to change his style from Meet the Feebles to Lord of the Rings. Hell, Ralph Bakshi was also able to go from Fritz the Cat to Lord of the Rings as well. So I'm perfectly capable of changing my style when doing, something like this. And especially when it comes to some of my earlier films, like with my practice in like doing suspense and stuff like that, I'm hoping I can utilize that, to a Dreamhouse Kings idea. And I think this would work as a mini series. Like maybe every episode could be feature length and based on each book, and maybe we could release it monthly, so it could be over the course of 6 months. That way it builds up more suspense. And it's not like Harry Potter where every book is a different year. It's like it's 6 books, but it's set over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, so this could all be filmed simultaneously because the characters wouldn't age substantially by any means. And I want to do a good balance of what's practical and CG. So I'm sure we could find like a good location of like the house for the exteriors, maybe also combine some miniatures. We could have some sets built, especially of the hallway, like the hallway with the portals. That would be something in which we do like this on this diagram. We'd have to be able to break it apart in quadrants to make filming easier for certain angles, but I'd also want it to give off a little bit of a claustrophobic vibe since it's in the attic and have a bit of a musty feeling. And I'm not sure what Robert Liparulo intended. He may have said it, I'm not sure. I just noticed this bit of artwork on his website that depicted with green wallpaper. I always envision it with red wallpaper to give off a surreal giallo kind of vibe, but I want to make sure the author is more involved in this so that way we can make it true to his vision, because it's just my adaptation, but I want to make sure it's true to his vision too. And with this, I feel like we could build just one antechamber, but maybe we could have and use them interchangeably, but maybe we could have 2 more, so that way if we have a shot like this where you see 2 open antechambers, we can use that. That could cut down production costs. And maybe we could combine it. Like maybe we could build parts of the hallway where they're interacting directly with the wall lights and the doors, but have a miniature for certain wider shots. And that's something also you'd see like when they go to the different time periods. Like we could mix up different things. Like there's a scene where they go to the Coliseum. We could possibly use Red Rocks if we filmed it in Colorado. And it's just, I don't want to use CGI for absolutely everything. I want to make sure we have a good balance of what's CG, what's practical, what's done with a blue screen. There is a character who they call Themis. He's a side villain who works for Taxidian, and he's a pretty big guy. So that could be done with practical effects, because we could have a guy in a fat suit. Whenever he's interacting with the characters, we could have shorter actors, shorter extras, so that way they look smaller than him. And maybe we'd probably have to build a smaller version of the hallway, so that way he looks pretty big, relative to the hallway. And there's also another thing, this won't be too spoilery, but I'm not going to give away the twist of this, but this is something that would definitely have to be practical. Like, there is a scene where David is accidentally teleported to a small claustrophobic cobblestone room where he thinks he's stepping on gravel, only to see that he's stepping on a bunch of human bones. Like that, we could build like a set, make it look like the cobblestone walls, make it look aged, but make it where we could split it in half, kind of like this on the diagram, so that way we can film at different angles. And the bones, we can make the fake bones have some of them, have their idiosyncrasies, like bad teeth, some of them looking brownish, some of them being broken, some of them having pieces of flesh or clothes on them. because, you know, there is a reason for the skeletons being there. I'm just trying not to spoil in this segment. And that would be a really, really cool practical effect. Like, think the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. It used a lot of CGI, but it also used a lot of practical effects and miniatures. And people might wonder, you can still make CGI look realistic, it would make things easy, but here's the thing. I don't like making things that easy. I like when you actually have to put a lot of hard work and effort and passion into it. Because then the project ends up being, you know, feeling more fulfilling. Otherwise, you just snapped your fingers and everything came, it's like whoop-de-doo. It's not, I mean, this is something I'm passionate about. This isn't something I'm doing as a cheap cash grab. That's especially why I don't want to use AI. And I am not anti-CGI as much as I might seem. I'm anti-CGI being used too much or in, like, inappropriate places. And a lot of these, as I mentioned, these are things that should be done practically. But then there will also be CGI for certain things like the portals, the woolly mammoth in one scene, and even some, like, you know, just adding some touch-ups. And also, with the whole 2009 theme, I was thinking of having this film on a mini DV camera to make it look similar to early 2000s YouTube movies like Sage of Darkness, The Hero of Time, Legend of Neil, and Scotty Whitehurst's movies. And I even bought Scotty Whitehurst's mini DV camera that I could use, but it depends on what Robert Liparulo wants. It's still his vision. And I also will say, and I will still work with Robert Liparulo on this if I ever meet him in person, but I have made some changes to the script, and no, they're not drastic changes by any means. It's just sometimes what works in a book isn't always going to translate well to a film, so that's why changes are usually made in adaptations. Just as long as they benefit the story and we keep the whole gist. I especially want to keep the creepy atmospheric moments, like when they come to the house and explore it, whenever David and Xander find the secret upstairs hallway. But one of the big changes, and this isn't too much of a big spoiler, but in the last book, they go through a portal and end up on the set of the movie Predator, where they get to meet John McTiernan and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm thinking of changing that because we might deal with copyright issues, and it would be difficult, you know, to have, like, the actors and everything. So my idea is I'm going to have a fake movie within a movie that Xander watches all the time, like an 80s action movie, and they go to the set on that, so that way it can be, like, made-up actors and a made-up thing, and that way you don't have to worry about copyright issues. And one of the things I'm putting in here is I wanted to very much visualize how I would do certain scenes, especially to see what Robert Liparulo thinks if he ever sees this video. Some of them I really wanted to see in 3D, so I used stop-motion animation, and keep in mind this is just a test. This is not what the final film would look like, this is just a test to see how I would do certain angles and lighting and stuff like that. And there are some that I storyboarded. And so, without further ado, I'm going to show you these specific scenes, and little heads up. I'm going to give you this heads up. This is where I'm going to be spoiling. This is where I'm going to give a lot of different spoilers for certain scenes. So, if you have not read the books, I highly recommend you read them first. And definitely get physical copies. We want to keep physical media alive. But again, I am going to be spoiling from this point on, so if you want to read the books first, stop the video now. Couldn't sleep. I hear ya, it's a new place. Just a box, it sounds like. Get the flashlights. No way, I'm not leaving your side. Just do it. I don't want to. I promise I'll be out the door and we'll keep watch. Just grab them. I swear I heard a noise down there. Same. But can you really trust any noises around this house? Could that be Dad? Too big to be him. It's like something out of Suspiria. It's like a hotel. A hotel designed by Dr. Seuss. Looks like Greek design. This might represent Plato. Why though? Who knows? I'm new to it just as much as you are. It must be locked from the other side, which means he's probably in there. It was my idea. In many cultures, families would keep a plate at the table for missing loved ones. A son who'd gone off to war, or someone who'd... It reflected that person's place in their hearts. They were gone, but in a way they were still... You made this yourself? It smells good. Oh, sorry. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this food and this family. Please be with our wife and mother. Keep her safe. Amen. Remember last Sunday you told Mom we'd go to church this Sunday, no excuses? I wasn't expecting such a doozy of an excuse, but no more next week for sure. It's not unmanly to cry, son. If we didn't have strong feelings, how could we love or fight? When our flesh is cut, we bleed. When our heart is broken, we cry. There's nothing wrong with that. It only becomes an issue if it gets in the way of what you have to do. You can't crumble when others are counting on you. We'll be okay. You know that, don't you? You are Edward King, are you not? You know I am. And you own this house. I have to confess to a bout of foolishness. How's that? This house, I've admired this house for a long time. I kept telling myself to buy it, but... And here's where I've been foolish. I never thought I needed to hurry. Here you are proving me wrong. What? And those are some of my favorite scenes that I've animated and or storyboarded. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if any of you are Dreamhouse Kings fans, feel free to comment on this video, because I have not seen anybody in person who knows about this book series. That's how niche it is. And I'd love to see what Robert Liparulo thinks about this, because if this is something he'd want to revive, I would absolutely love to help him adapt this book series into film since I'm a huge fan of it. And I've been writing the scripts and doing a little bit of storyboarding about it. And this could be something that could be like a really good thing to adapt. I just think it should be done independently with the right people, so that way, it won't be turned into something it's not. So anyway, like, feel free to comment. Let me know what you thought of these scenes, or if you saw them any differently, or if they looked exactly the way you envisioned them. And I'll see you next time on the next little episode of Adaptation Ideas. Next time, I'll be talking about adapting the niche SNES video game Illusion of Gaia.